okay, so you're obviously not doing something right. So what are you not doing? And it's like being able to help them understand, okay, this is what I need to improve on. Because the thing about the game of football, and I tell people this all the time, is, and sports in general, if we look at the game of football as a bucket of water, when it comes to having talent, that's just a small part of it. But it's going to take you a gallon of heart. It's going to take you a gallon of work ethic. It's going to take you, it's so much more to go in just sports in general, because let's be honest, we all got talent of some sort.
Well, welcome everyone back to another Masters of the Game interview. And today I get to introduce you to Sly Williams. I've been excited for this one. He was going through living in Florida, some hurricane stuff over the past couple weeks, but we got it hooked up. We got it set. And so excited to have him today. I'll say hey to Sly here in a minute, but let me tell you about his background if you don't know about him. Now, up above my right shoulder, one of the reasons I'm super excited to talk to him is he is a former Denver Bronco. He was actually drafted in the first round by the Broncos and had 2 stints with the Broncos. He's played for multiple teams as well, including the Titans, Lions, Dolphins, Saints, and Chargers. And we're going to dive into his story today because I think it's very, very unique, right? Not only did he play at the highest level in the NFL, but he played 1 year of high school football and then decided to walk on at Coffeyville Community College, played there for 2 years, and then earned a scholarship at University of North Carolina, was named All-American, was named All-ACC first team, and then drafted, like I said, in the first round, 28th overall pick by the Denver Broncos. He now spends his time in motivational speaking, talking about his 5 pillars of championship life at slywilliamsmotivation.com. We'll have links to everything, but I want to dive into his story. So Sly, so excited to be with you. Thanks for taking your time today.
Man, I appreciate you having me, man, and I appreciate the intro as well. Kind of got my juices flowing again.
Get right. This is all about going down memory lane, man. I'm telling you. So I have to ask, I always like starting these off with this, but I mean, you had a long career, you had a brief stint in high school, collegiately, professionally. What's one of the, memories that sticks out to you as one of those most memorable moments?
I would say for me, I would have to say, 2 things. One of them being the day I graduated college. And I would say so because of the journey getting to that point. And it was very important for me to graduate college. And I remember having the opportunity to leave school after my junior year. And I remember calling my mentor, a guy called my mentor, and him telling me, hey, listen, remember the reason why we started this journey in the first place. And that was to get the degree. And so I remember going back to school because I wanted to finish the game, and I called it the game, Kyle, I wanted to finish. And so getting my degree was extremely special to me. And I would say second to that would be the Super Bowl. And I would say the Super Bowl because I felt like the Super Bowl was kind of, for me, the icing on the cake. It was kind of like, it was a surreal moment. And I really had an out-of-body experience because I remember when the confetti started to come down and I started to see my family, run out onto the field. And it was kind of like I was able to take myself out of the situation and look at it from their eyes and just seeing the excitement on their face. And they hadn't put it down, but just seeing the excitement on their face and being able to watch my son at the time, that was 3 at the time, catch the confetti out the air and seeing my mother who recently passed away and being able to just have my entire family, really people that had been along the whole journey with me and just seeing their faces and their expressions to me, it was just like, I did it. That was the first time in my life I really felt like, I made a generational change for my family.
I want to dive into this because your story is so unique, right, to get to that point. And, you look at, like, you're going through high school and, my son, as I was talking to him, letting him know that we were talking today, I asked him, what's one question you want to ask Sly? And I told him a little about your background, right? Playing 1 game in high school or playing 1 year in high school, starting 1 game, and then all of a sudden deciding to walk on to this community college. And then you get to North Carolina and the rest is history, right? And then you graduate, all that stuff. And he thought about it for a minute and he goes, why all of a sudden did he get this feeling of like, I need to play football? Like in high school, was there a trigger? Was there, what was the reason that you started saying, I'll play football. And then all of a sudden it changed the whole trajectory generationally for your family. But
Listen,
why the decision in high school?
I want to tell you a story, right? And this is why. And I don't know how religious you are, or but this is why I feel like God has guided me on this journey.
Yes.
And I say it because I was kicked out of high school as a sophomore, right? I was kicked out of the 8th grade. My father had a relapse when I was in the 8th grade. As I don't know if you know, but I was raised by my father. And when I was in the 8th grade, he had a relapse and they kicked me out of school. I was getting into some fights, so they kicked me out of school and I had to go to school 2 hours away. My older sister was in college at a university 2 hours away, and she came down and picked me and my brother up. And we went up there to live with her, and she was able to get us re-enrolled in school. And it was probably, I would say, 60% or 60% white, probably 40% African-American and other. And for me, it was kind of a culture shock because I come from a very urban community. And so when I went to Jefferson City, it kind of helped me get back on the right track. So I started to go to school more. I started to have better relations with my teachers. Where the issue came in, it is I had to start working a job. So I get a job to take care of myself because my father is still in St. Louis. So I get this job and I'm working as many hours as they allow me to. So I'm getting out of school. I'm getting to work 4 o'clock. I'm there till 12 o'clock. I still got to go to school the next day. So I'm getting up and I'm getting to school at 9:30, 10 o'clock, sometimes 11 o'clock. And some days I'm just so tired I don't go to school. And so the principal brought me into the office when I was a sophomore. And she said, hey, we're going to expel you from school for missing too many days. And, we got a few options for you. And one of those options being going to an alternative school, which is kind of like a credit recovery school program, so to say, for kind of troubled kids. And I remember my father, he went to that meeting with me. And I remember as we was leaving the school, he started crying. And, that was one of the first times I had ever seen him cry. And I know he was crying because he felt like he had failed me. And something just hit me, and I just looked at him and I said, he was like, hey son, just get your GED, and get you a job. And something hit me, and it was like, I literally looked at him and I said, no, I'm gonna do it the right way. And so I took the rest of that year off and, I continued to work. And so what I did was I re-enrolled back into the same school, which would have been my junior year-wise, but credit-wise, I would have still been a sophomore. Yes. So I re-enrolled back in school my junior year and started to get back on the right track. I was working less. I couldn't play any sports that year because I didn't meet the requirements from the year before. Yes. And so I just was strictly school. And toward the end of the school year, I was walking down the hall and get ready to go home from school. And one of the coaches, I ran into one of the football coaches who I didn't even know was a football coach. And he was like, hey, man, come here. And I went over there and he said, what's up with football? Why you not playing football? And I'm like, I ain't never thought about playing football. I always been a basketball player. And he said, I tell you what, come down and meet the coaches and just see how you like it. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So I went down there with him after school and met some of the coaches, and some of them was my teachers, and, and they just like, hey man, just start working out with the team, see how you like it. It was toward the end of the year, so they was kind of going into the summer weight program. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I ended up doing it and really just fell in love with the brotherhood that it brought, and the discipline that came with it. And going into my senior year, I just really I didn't understand the game of football. I was a big athletic guy, but I didn't really understand the game of, using your hands, the A gap, the B gap, or, you got a spike technique, different things like that. So I was just a guy that was just out there, just being big, and so ultimately didn't really play that much. I started one game, which was senior day. We had senior day and I was able to start that game. And that was literally the reason why I started playing football. My father was a really good football player in high school as a nose tackle. He was a really good football player. And he would always tell me, hey, man, give it a try, but I was kind of really into basketball and really wanted to work a job because I had to take care of myself. So, and it was just that coach said, hey, come try it out. I mean, I'll go try it out. I had been going to school more often, getting good grades. So I'd give it a try. And that was how the journey started. One meeting in a hallway from a coach that introduces you to the sport and you see it and start enjoying it. I think it's so powerful. I mean, like even he's talking about walking out of that meeting with your dad and like
you saying in that moment, like, no, I'm going to do it the right way. When you look back, was that like kind of God speaking through you? Was it like, I don't know, you were just adamant that like, I'm choosing now to like not do this and not go down this path and I want something different for my life? Or was it something like, I don't know, special in that moment? Or
I would say, and this is one of the reasons why I give my father so much credit. And I don't know how deep can I go,
we'll go where we need to, man. Go. I love this.
And this is one of the reasons why I give my father so much credit. Right. And this is why, he was truly my hero. And I say all the time, my hero didn't wear a cape. He wore steel toe boots, So my father taught me two valuable lessons growing up. And one of them was hard work and the other was respect. And I think those two key factors never allowed me to ever take the easy route out. So when I would face adversity, even though the easy route may be where you can get it done faster or it's easier this way, it's always like, okay, we'll just take the hardest route because that's the right way to do it. And so throughout my entire life, even when I was a kid, a situation that was life-changing for me was I was a big-time basketball fan, loved playing basketball, and I had a few of my best friends. We would always play basketball every day. And so I remember one day I was coming home from work, and it was four of my best friends. They were standing up on the hill. And they would say, hey, man, what's up, man? I'm like, what y'all about to do? And they was about to go commit a robbery. They said, we about to go commit this robbery. And they were like, man, you want to roll with us? And I'm like, in that moment, it's like, well, yeah, but no, I'm cool. So I'm going to go hang out with my girlfriend and just relax, And literally, about an hour later, me and my girlfriend, we standing on the porch and we in the projects, low income housing. And literally right next door is where they had went to commit the robbery. And all I heard is about 2 or 3 gunshots, pow, pow, pow. And a bunch of people start running out the house. And we stand on the porch, so we run in the house. And I later find out that, somebody had got murdered. And, that night changed their life. They all went to jail for murder. And I think about all the time, like, what if I would have just said, yeah, man, I'm going to roll with y'all? My life would have been so much different.
Yes.
And so as I look at all these obstacles that I face, or even just thinking about, having the opportunity to go to a credit recovery program and graduate in the next 6 months, I would have been able to graduate, yes. Accelerated program. But for me, it's just like, well, that's just not the right way to do it. And I remember graduating high school, I was super excited because it was monumental for me. You know what I'm saying? And so I graduated. I was working at Taco Bell at the time, which I had been for the last 2+ years. And I immediately said, you know what, I'm going to quit Taco Bell and I'm going to get a better job. Well, so that better job was a radiator factory. My father had worked in the factory my entire life. Mm-hmm. So I said, man, I'm going to get a job at a radiator factory. And they hired me. I was super excited, making about $400 a week, which this back in 2008, 2009, actually. So it's decent money. And I'm super excited about it.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, cool. And I'll never forget, man, one day my machine broke down. And I was having issues. So a guy came over to fix the machine. He was an older guy. He'd been there 40 years. And we were just talking. And, I was the youngest guy in the plant at the time. I was 19 years old. And he was just like, yeah, man, I've been here 40 years. And I'm like, 40, that's a long time. He said, yeah, I'm about to retire here in May. And I just remember looking around like, I don't know if I want to be here 40 years. That's kind of so in that moment, I literally made a decision to say, you know what, I'm going to go back to school. And so I got out I used to get off at 7 in the morning. So I got out that morning and I called a guy that was a basketball coach and a strength and conditioning coach at the school who also played a huge role in my story.
Yes.
I remember I called him because we kept a close relationship. I said, hey, coach, man, I want to go back to school. He said, I tell you what, he said, when you get off tomorrow morning, he said, just come by the house and see me. So I got out the next morning, drove over there. He was like, all right, man, what's on your mind? Like, I want to go back to school. He's like, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to become an engineer. And he said, okay, it's going to be tough. And he said, especially with your academic history, he said, you're going to have to put a lot of work in. And I said, I'm not running from the work. Yep. So we started to put together an entire plan. It was, I had to take the test to get into college, had to, fill out the financial aid programs.
Yes.
And the final step was getting the actual footage to the football coaches. And I remember at the time I was going to go to a Division II school, but we talked about it. He said, well, you won't be able to play right away because of your grades. So you will have to sit out for an entire year. He said, but if you go to the junior college route, you will be able to play right away. And so I remember getting my tape, got in contact with the junior college, Coffeyville, Kansas. I remember calling them, talked to the head coach. Like, I'm 6'3" and 315. I play offensive and defensive line. They was super excited. Oh, yeah, send us some tape. Well, I sent the tape, and they stopped picking up the phone.
Oh,
So I'm calling every day. I literally call. I'm leaving messages. Hey, coach, it's Sylvester Williams. I just want to know if you got my film. I'm really interested in coming out. No phone calls get returned. So I talked to my mentor, and I said, what do I do? He said, well, we got two choices to make. He said, we can either take a leap of faith and just drive up there and look them in the face and ask for opportunity, or we can just go a different route and just enroll in Division II, sit the year out, and just try to play the next year. Well, remember, I told you, I never run away from the work. So I said, okay, literally, man, I put everything I owned into my vehicle and got on the highway. It was about a 6-hour drive. When I got there, I remember this day like it was just that. I walked into the office and he was sitting in the chair and he looked up at me. He said, who are you? I said, I'm Sylvester Williams. He said, what are you doing here? And I said, Coach, I just want the opportunity to walk on to your program. He said, well, we're not doing walk-ons right now. Come back next week and we'll give you an opportunity. We'll work you out and see how you look. So I went back the next week and worked out. And literally it was like, we need some big bodies. You're a big guy, so you can come work out with us in the spring. I said, okay. And that was all I needed. And I took it from there. And from there, It was like everything I needed to do, I went above and beyond.
That's so good. Athletes listening right now, if you're not hearing this, you need to. Putting yourself out there and the guts to go like take a chance like that. Like if you're not picking that up, you need to, like, holy moly, right? Of going after the opportunity. You want it, go get it. And you could have done the easy things and kept calling. But you drove out there and you're like, let me get in front of this person and see what happens. And like amazing things occurred. That's incredible, Sly.
Yeah, it was and that's why I said, and I tell that when I speak to young athletes, especially when I talk to young athletes and they say, the number one thing they say, well, the coach don't like me, right? And like, okay, what coach don't like the good players? Yep. And so that's where the accountability part come in. And it's like, okay, what are you not doing? Oh, okay, so you're obviously not doing something right. So what are you not doing? And it's like being able to help them understand, okay, this is what I need to improve on. Because the thing about the game of football, and I tell people this all the time, is, and sports in general, if we look at the game of football as a bucket of water, when it comes to having talent, that's just a small part of it. But it's going to take you a gallon of heart. It's going to take you a gallon of work ethic. It's going to take you, it's so much more to go in just sports in general, because let's be honest, we all got talent of some sort. I can walk down the street and I can find a guy and I can say, okay, run a dig route. And he can run a dig route to make it look good enough to where say, well, you could play football.
Yes.
But when you add those other factors into the equation is when it becomes difficult for guys to make the leap. Yes. And that's the biggest thing about young athletes is like you see all these highlight reels. Man, that look easy. Yeah, if you just run out there and do it one time. Yeah. But in the game of football, it's about doing the same thing great over and over and over and over and over again. And then when they get hard, continuing to do it over and over and over and over again. And that's the part that a lot of these young guys, they miss. It's just like, well, I'm a good player. I'm better than him. Well, he obviously does something to help this team or that team win that you're not doing. So find out what that thing is.
Yes. That's so good. And you can still do it in your unique way, but it's understanding the bigger picture of how do I help? Like, what's that person doing that I'm not? And how do I, in my unique way, help the team win?
Absolutely.
Similarly to that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when they put you in the game, they can't take you out. That is the old saying goes, right?
When I went to, you know anything about junior colleges?
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to junior college, I was a walk-on. And it was 4 high school All-Americans that was already signed to Division I schools at that college. They just didn't have the grades in high school, so they had to start off at the junior college, which, especially at these big junior college conferences, some of these colleges have relationships with these schools where, let's say if I'm University of Missouri and I got a guy who not making his grades, so I may place him at Coffeyville. So, hey, go to Coffeyville for you, get your grades up. So it was 4 high school All-Americans on this team. And I remember getting her in the spring, and a part of me, became discouraged because it's like, well, I'm seeing these guys lift weights. I'm like, well, I ain't bigger than him. I ain't stronger than him. Man, but you know what I started to notice? Those guys wasn't working hard. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to just go 100. The coaches say do this. I'm going to go 110. So these guys, you can get anybody to go 100%. I'm going 110. So I'm working out 3 times a day. I'm studying film like a madman. Every day I'm just studying the game of football. Okay, this guy, he stepped this way. He put his hands this way. And I remember going home that summer. And when I went home, because in junior college, you get the entire summer. I remember going home that summer, and which I had an okay spring because I had studied the game. I had got in some decent shape. So I had a decent spring. The coach was kind of excited about what I could bring to the table. And I remember going home that summer, and I said, okay, I got this whole summer. What am I going to do? And I literally would get up every morning, and I would go to the gym and work out. Then I would go right back in the peak of the heat at 3 o'clock. And I would go onto the field, and I would work out. And we started this, me and a bunch of guys I went to high school with. Some of them was playing sports in college as well. We started this whole thing where it was like, we're going to work out every day in the peak of the heat because that's when football is played. So we go at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, man, and we're going to work out every day. We're going to train. Listen, I tell you this, it was about 10 guys the first day. The second week, you're looking at about 6 guys. Third week, maybe 4 guys. By the end of the summer, I was the only guy that was consistently going every day. The only guy. And I remember I used to tell myself every day, I used to ask myself, Sylvester, what do they have that you don't? Nothing. Keep going, keep going. And man, when I went back, I remember the first day of training camp practice, I amazed myself at the player that I was. Like, I remember just going out there and I just said, listen, I'm just going to do this. And it was like, I would go back and I would watch the tape, and I used to just start scratching my head like, man, is that me? And it's just like, all through the hard work that I put in, all through the studying the game of football, and it had all paid off. And in that conference, they got a rule. Only 12 guys that's not from the state of Kansas can make the team. So you can have as many state of Kansas players as you want, but you only can have 12 that's not from the state of Kansas. Well, I was from Missouri.
Yep. And
I remember it was cut day, and I was in the line. I was waiting because everybody get in line, and you just praying, man, I hope they don't cut me. And I remember going into the coach's office, and he looked at me. He said, hey, man, you've done something that I have never seen done before. He said, you made this team, you made the out-of-state rule as an out-of-state walk-on in your first year. He said, I've never seen that done before. And, man, the rest was history for me.
I think this is so critical because I have the conversation with my kids all the time, athletes I work with all the time, right? I think one of the secrets to success, right, of if you're going to be successful at anything is you have to have that hunger, right? You have to want it more than other people. And I think that's sometimes easy to say, right? Of like, yeah, I want it. I want that. And whatever that thing is, right? I want that. But then it comes down to like, are you willing to do the work? And 99% of people don't. And yeah. I think that's one of the secrets of like, you have to have that hunger. Like you have to want it bad enough where it's like, you're willing to show up at 3 in the afternoon, which if y'all have been to Missouri in the middle of summer at 3 in the afternoon, goodness sake, right? It's warm. It's hot. It's humid. Like it's no joke. And do you think that's one of the secrets? Like as you progressed, like the people just had that hunger, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think for me, it's like, it's the it factor, right? And when I look at some of the greatest athletes that I've been around, they have a different mentality, right? And even if I look at a guy like DeMarcus Ware, who a heck of a player, and I remember his first day of pad at practice, he lost a rep by a guy by the name of Ryan Clady, and I was shocked at how much it bothered him because it's just like, well, it's just one rep, and that's kind of how I'm thinking. Well, it's just one rep, and I remember after practice, he working with, to figure out, okay, so I won't never lose to this past set again. And, when I talked to him, I'm like, man, what was that about? And it was just like him, it's like, I don't like to lose. He's like, no matter what it is, I don't like to lose. And I think that for me, I've always been a competitor and I never liked the failure. So it's like to feel like I failed at something is like, I would never be okay with myself if I accepted that, in that moment. And, again, I go back to my father always teaching me hard work. Like when I was a kid, we never had, I didn't have a traditional life where it's like, I'm outside playing ball with my friends, hanging out with my friends. It's like on my Saturdays, on my Sundays, my father was also a mechanic on the side. So we would spend our entire day either at the junkyard, getting car parts or working on cars or working on the house. Like that was my weekends every weekend. And I maybe would be able to squeeze an hour out of there where I can go play some ball before he come looking for me. And I think the issue with a lot of the athletes nowadays is they think it should come easy, or they think that, well, I'm athletic, so I should be the one. It's like, man, you got to bring something different to the table, and you got to have a different type of hunger. Yes. Because it's a reason why less than 1% of people make it to professional football. Is that because it's something that's almost borderline impossible to do. And so if you're thinking about the millions of athletes across the world, just find what separates you from the other million people that do what you do. And it's like a lot of people think that it's just because I'm who I am or I'm the chosen one. And it's like, no, I've never been the most athletic. I've never been the biggest. I've never been the fastest. I've never been the strongest. But what I refuse to do is be outworked by anybody. And that is what took me from never playing the game of football to lapping guys that have been playing football their whole life. And I tell the athletes all the time, whatever you're doing, times it by 10. And again, if you want to say, okay, I need to rest my body, well, that's when you need to pour into your brain. I can watch the game of football. We live in a world now where it's like you could study on the internet. So I could sit in front of the computer and, learn how to a pass move, and I could study that move. So it's muscle memory. So I'm looking at this every day, and I'm looking at it, and I'm walking through it. So when I get onto the field, I'd have seen this move done so many times. Okay, well, let me just try it out. And that's the difference between me taking a day off and saying I'm going to study the game of football, or me taking a day off and saying I'm going to play Fortnite all day. Yep. Or, man, I'm going to play Madden, or, man, I'm just going to sleep all day. It's just like you have to be able to fight temptations because temptations are everywhere. Yes. And I've seen temptations ruin the lives of so many phenomenal athletes. It's just like the temptation of, smoking, or the temptation of, girls, or, the temptation of, man, I'm tired, so I'm going to sleep in and not go to class. And then you look up, I'm 35 years old, and the same guys that I was in school with that were more talented than me are reaching out to me like, man, Sly, listen, if I would have just did what you did, if I would have just did something different. And a buddy of mine told me, man, it really broke my heart. He said, man, the thing I struggle with the most right now, he said, is I got to show my kids all these great things I did in high school, all these great things I did as a high school All-American and committed to the University of Kansas. And he said, but now today, he said, they look at me and they wonder why I didn't make it. He said, them some of the toughest conversations to have is to explain to them the mistakes that I made and why I am where I'm in life and why I'm not where I should be. And I think that too much we think about right now instead of thinking about 10 years down the line.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. I love how you call it the it factor, right? When you look at people in sports and football, I'm like, man, he or she, like, they have it. And we're like, What is it? What? And I think we always go back to like, well, they have a talent. Like, look at them, look at the talent they have. And I love that reframing of like, the talent is the work they put in. Like, that's what leads to the it factor is the work ethic. The it factor is I'm choosing to like not distract myself. I'm choosing to like approach something different.
Absolutely.
And if you're starting out with 10 people on the field like you did at 3 p.m. in Missouri, and all of a sudden now you're the one left, that's the it factor because you're the one doing the work. I always try to tell my kids, like, I was having this conversation with my son. He's a hockey player, and I told my girls this too, but even the other nights, like he's trying to take like 500-600 shots in the basement a night. And he's starting to now see this kind of pay off. And it's really interesting to watch Sly, right? And even the other night, he's like, I really don't feel like doing this. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the greater goal? And he knows what the goal is. He didn't really answer, right? So he came up with that in his mind of what he wants. And you made a comment of like, well, I mean, do what you want, but I mean, I bet if you just started shooting pucks, you'd be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he kind of sat there, and probably a minute and a half went by, and he got up, and all of a sudden I hear pucks being fired in the basement and destroying our walls. And and I'm like, that's great.
And this is what, if I was to talk to him, this is what I would show him. No, first of all, he still got all his teeth.
Yeah, he does. Thank goodness.
So what's the issue with hockey players and not having teeth?
I don't know. I always joke with people, if I played hockey, I'm like too handsome to get into fights like that. So
man, I went, my first ever event I did with hockey players was in Denver. And it was like maybe 10 guys that didn't have, and it was just like they was okay with it. And it's like for them, it's like a shield of, it's like they shield of look what I do. But no, what I would say is, you said something that was key. It was like, okay, it was just one day that he didn't feel like doing it. And that's the day where you gain the advantage. When you push yourself to get up and, like you said, go down there and shoot those pucks, that's the difference right there. Because a lot of people would have just said, man, I don't feel like doing it today. I'm chilling today. But when you're able to overcome that temptation of not wanting to do it, or man, I just don't feel like it, I'm tired, and you're able to get out there, well, that's that extra step right there. That's the next step that you got to take right there is, when you don't feel like doing something, doing it anyway, because you know that it's for the betterment of your career.
Yep. That's so good. Yeah, I think my goal, and you have kids too, I think as a parent, I look at all my 3 kids and I think they're more mentally tough than I was growing up, right? And that's what I want. I think that's my goal as a parent of like, how do I make them, tougher, and not that they're like not looking away from the emotions. I think emotions are great, but like, how do they, I don't know, just do the work I didn't do, right? And just continue to develop and elevate the bar, right? As you have kids. Let me ask you this. So you go from the junior college, and then you get the opportunity at North Carolina, and then you get drafted and you go to the NFL. What was the biggest difference you noticed going from first of all, from junior college to like playing at North Carolina? What was the biggest? Was it like overwhelming? Was it like, yeah, I got this? Like, what was that jump like for you going to like D1 football?
I would say for me, I think I made the transition pretty easy. I think number one, because of the work that I had put in, and because of, again, before I had ever got on the field at Carolina, I had studied the game like the back of my hand. And what I would do is so this was my thing. So I signed to the University of North Carolina in January of 2011. So because I played there 11 to 12. So I signed out January of 2011. So when I get on campus, the first thing that I started doing is I started going to the defensive line meeting room every day. And I would go in there, and what I would do is I would go watch practice from the year before, and I would watch the games, all of the games. I had watched every game and every practice. And what I would do was I would just study, number one, the physicality of the game, number one, the techniques of the game, the intensity of the game, to just feed my brain with kind of what to expect. Because I believe that if you take a man and you take a human and you say, and you pour into him, and no matter what environment you put him in, as long as he got the right tools, he can adapt. And so for me, it was equipping myself with those tools and like, okay, understanding. So guys that I was going up against, let's say if it was an offensive lineman, well, I knew all of his sets. I knew the way he played. I knew if he was a physical guy or he was a finesse guy. Even the defensive guys that I was competing with for the job, well, I knew all their weaknesses because I went and studied the game, and I went and studied their practices from individual drills. How hard are they working? And that was kind of the thing for me. And went to Carolina, and I was a day one starter at the University of North Carolina, and started my entire career there and got to the NFL and, took the same mentality. What a difference between the NFL is. Well, now you take college where it's 100 guys and okay, you got some guys with NFL is everybody's top level, and for me, the reason why I was able to stay in the NFL for as long as I did is so when I got to the NFL and I came in as a rookie, first round draft pick, and for me, it was like, okay, where do I fit in? Because again, you come to a team that's already was a game away from the Super Bowl last year. The expectation is Super Bowl this year. So the roster is full of talent. And I come in and first day, they're like, we expecting for you to be this guy. Well, at the beginning, I didn't pan out to be the guy that they expected me to be. And so instead of getting discouraged, it's like, okay, well, now let me find a role on this great defensive line for myself and what that role may be. So I come in my first year, end up with 2 sacks, have a good year, have a decent year toward the end. I get the starting job, come back next year, have a down year. And it's like, okay, what's next? So we get a whole new coaching staff. And I never forget the defensive line coach, Bill Kolar, who I love to death, called me. I was on vacation. And and when you're on vacation, the calls don't come through. You just get the voicemail.
Yep.
So I get a voicemail and he's cursing me out. Your ASS better be ready and we're going to push you. And I'm just like, oh, and I remember I'm like, oh, this could mean 2 things. This could mean, this your last chance, or this could mean, we expect a lot from you. So I never forget, I got back and I called him and he just explained to me, hey, listen, we expect a lot out of you. He said, we're not going to give you all the chance in the world. You need to make it happen right now. And I never forget, man, it just sparked me. And so what I did was I went from the 3 technique, I went to the nose tackle position. And when I went to the nose tackle position, I was undersized for the position. Because, you look at a guy like Terrence Knighton, who 350 pounds, 6'4" guy. Well, I'm 6'2.5", 315. So I was small for the position. So what I did was I just used my technique. I just used technique to be able to keep me in the NFL and understanding the offensive schemes. Yes. So I knew if it was an odd near set, they running power strong. I knew if it was an IFR, they running counter weak. And so it's just understanding these different offensive schemes. So when I would line up it's like I had a good idea of what play they was going to run. And based off watching film and understanding, okay, what's their 3 type run plays? Because I ultimately became a run defender. Throughout my career, I was known for stopping the run. So it's like, okay, understanding what are the offenses, what's the 3 top, what are their 3 top runs? What runs did they have success with last week? Because they more than likely gonna come back to those runs. Yep. And understanding that, man, it literally, was able to expand my career, because, for me, it was like, I never took a day for granted. It's like every day I played in the NFL, I was grateful for. Because I knew that it wasn't forever. And it was a partnership. Sylvester Sly Williams was in partnership with the NFL. And at some point, that partnership had to end. And I wanted to make sure that I left everything I had on the field.
We need like a half day. We're just going to hang out and talk and record the whole time because there's freaking gems in here, man. I think that's so cool because one of the things I hear Sly like talking to all these, pro athletes and Olympians, all this sort of stuff that you're talking about here is one of the themes of like high performance, call it, or like I want to stick at a high level, along with like you have a base level talent, sure. To your point with the bucket, right? That's it pours a little bit in the bucket, right? And then you have the work ethic of like, what does that take? And the study and the elimination of distractions and like just make that choice every day. But the thing you just said, I think is another ingredient I hear to success, like in your bucket, right? Of like, you have to have this love for the game and appreciation for the moment. Like you have to just be happy to be there. Otherwise frankly, I mean, I've had these experiences where you're doing something that you're just like, man, this is not for me. And you look at that of like, yeah, I'll suck it up and do it. It doesn't last very long. You're kind of like, I'm done with this. Like so do you agree you got to have that like love? Was that a theme of like, I talked to the Ryan Harrises of the world, like your ex-teammate and stuff like that. Like I see these themes of like, I love the game. And so I was willing to do the work. Is that an ingredient in your mind?
Listen, 100%. And I played in the NFL and I've played with guys that that they just don't love the game of football. And those guys don't stick around long. And you got guys that say, well, I'm just doing this to make some money. And those guys don't stick around long. And if you got too many of those guys on your team, you don't win, And I think the unique thing about that Super Bowl team that we had was we had guys like Ryan Harris, because if you know anything about his career, he was never he wasn't a high draft pick, and he wasn't a guy that was a perennial starter in the NFL. It was like he had to scratch and claw every year out of the NFL that he received. And so I remember going into that Super Bowl year, and if I'm not mistaken, he wasn't even slated to start. I think that year we had a lot of injuries on the offensive line, and he came in and took full advantage of his opportunity. Well, you look at a team like that 2015 team that we had is a lot of great players, but if we being honest, Peyton Manning wasn't himself. He was if you look at the Peyton Manning that we all know, he wasn't nowhere close to that. And yet we won a Super Bowl with him as our quarterback. And it's why it's because the guys around him, we all loved what we did, and we all put our best interests aside for what was best for the team. And it was like, whatever I got to do to help this team win is what I'm willing to do. And loving what we did and loving the guys that we did it with is what won us that Super Bowl.
Yep. We were happy. I was sharing with before this. For all of you who don't know this, I was born in Denver and pretty much raised here. So the Broncos was part of my life from, I think, popping out of the womb. Just something that part of my life. So I was just sharing with Sly that we had some disappointments as I was a young person and a young man. And then they got it done. So I was super happy for that. Two last questions, Sly, because I want to be cognizant of your time here. I'm just curious, who's the best offensive lineman you've had to go against? Was there somebody that sticks out as man, they were tough to play against?
Listen, and this is my personal opinion. A lot of people, a guy by the name of Alex Mack. You know who that is?
I don't know who that is.
Alex was a center. He played in Cleveland for quite some time, and he ended up finishing up in Atlanta. And that was the one guy that I played against in my career, where when I was in the game, I couldn't figure him out. And it was like he was so quick and he was so strong, and I struggled with him, that game. And I remember after the game talking to him, and it's just like, man, you earned my respect today, And I rarely say that. I mean, every guy I go against earn my respect, but I'm like, hey, bro, you earned my respect today, because it was just like continuously and I'm like, man, I couldn't figure it out. And he was a phenomenal player. And you got guys like the guy that played in Miami, Incognito, was a great player. Another great guy was Rodney Hudson, for Oakland. I played Oakland twice. Rodney Hudson was a guy that I had a tremendous amount of respect for. And they came in there with the Monstars that year. 2015, where they had everybody on the line was above 350 pounds. And they were rolling folks out the stadium, but I would say Alex Mack, and I would say next to him will probably be Incognito. Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. I think it's interesting diving into the mindset of them too. I imagine too, of how did they prepare? And because you can be strong, but strength only gets you so far, in the NFL, right? It's you have to have the smarts too of studying film and tendencies and keeping people unbalanced. And to your point, you think where the play is going, and they mix it up just because they can.
The whole thing about the best offensive lineman is, I'm gonna tell you a guy, by the way, that was Lou Vasquez. You know who that is?
Yeah.
And he played for Denver, and man, knee injuries took him out. Man, that was a phenomenal player. From the guard position, I mean, he was a load, and the offensive linemen that are great at what they do is they able to hide where they going. And so when you look at an offensive lineman's eyes and he looking right at you, it's like, okay, where you going? Because, some guys getting, they looking because they trying to get to that linebacker. So they got to make sure he where they think he at, or they may be leaning one way a little bit, or they may be sitting back on their hand, they finna pull. And it's just like playing against those guys. It's like, I'm going to do the same thing every time. So you never going to know where I'm going. And that was a little bit, you had a lot of guys like that. Alex Mack was one of those guys. Rodney Hudson was another one of those guys. And you had those guys that were just like, hey, man, Lou Vasquez, I played him every day in practice. And why I would love going up against him was because you had to bring it with him. Because if you didn't bring it every single play, he was going to have you back there playing linebacker for that play.
Why are you all the way back here, Sly?
Yeah, the linebacker like, man, what you do back here with us? And he pushed me back here.
That's so cool. And that's an art, right? That's like putting in the work to be able to do that, of like keeping your opponent guessing. You have to put in the work to be able to do that. I mean, to look somebody in the eye and you know exactly where you're going, and now you're confusing the person lined up across from you because they're like, well, I think he's going this way, but he's looking the same way at me every time.
Absolutely.
What the heck? We used to do that. I played, Little League football coming up, whatever. And you were taught, like, as linebackers to, like, you're looking at the running back, and typically at that age, right, they're looking where they're going to go, or they're glancing to the right or left because you watch their eyes, and then you're like, they're going that way. And man, you get to that expert level at the NFL, and that's a tough. You got to be smarter.
You look at it from a quarterback standpoint, right? Look at a guy like Peyton Manning. He wasn't athletic, but Peyton Manning knew the game like the back of his hand, and he had an arm. And that was a funny moment. I remember I was sitting in my house in Colorado, and I was watching the Patriots play the Falcons. And I remember at the end of that second quarter, I seen Tom Brady wink at one of the Falcons players. They had to show the camera on him, and him and the guy was talking about for him. He just winked at the guy. And I remember telling my buddy, I said, let me tell you something. The Falcons in trouble. I said, because he figured them out. And he knew, because he had been in that moment so many times, and because he knew the game so much, he knew that I know something about this defense that's going to be able to help us score in the second half. And they came out and lightened it up the second half. And it was like every time it was like the Falcons just couldn't figure it out. And he kept doing it over. And to me, that's what great players do. They adjust, they adapt. I seen Peyton Manning do it day after day after day. Yeah. Peyton Manning he had this thing. And it's like they would run an offensive play. And if it didn't go the way he thought it would go, they would just walk through the play. And I remember he would just drop back. And he wouldn't throw the ball. He would just hold it, and he would just look around the field. And it's like making sure that it's the way it's supposed to be, and also memorize, okay, well, this guy going to be there. This guy going to be there. That's why you see all the times, quarterback getting in trouble, and you see him just dump the ball. And you see, I didn't even know that guy was over there. Yeah, but he did, because he knew exactly where that guy was supposed to be. And that's the difference between being a good quarterback and going where the ball's supposed to go, and being a great quarterback, and when that guy's covered up, being able to say, okay, well, I know I got this safety net right here.
Yep. And it doesn't matter the position you play in the game of football. It doesn't matter the sport you play. Everything you're saying, Sly, like the preparation, putting in the work, eliminating distractions, of understanding like what you have to put in your bucket to be successful. And it doesn't guarantee you get to where you want to go, but darn it, it positions you to be successful and give you the best chance possible.
100%.
So good. Okay, last question, and then I'll let you rock and roll here, man. But if people want to connect with you, obviously we'll have, slywilliamsmotivation.com and things like that. But where can they best connect with you and bring you in to speak and chat you up and do all that stuff?
Well, I say this, man. You can find me on Sly Williams Motivation on Instagram, Sylvester Williams on LinkedIn, and my website is slywilliamsmotivation.com. And, I'm going to tell you why I chose to speak real quick. If we got time. How much time we got?
We got time. Yeah, I got as much time as you want.
I believe in this. So I did a speech, man, and it was in 2017, and it was at an event back in my hometown. I did this event, man, and I spoke to people, and afterwards, people could come up to me saying, man, you did such a great job. Man, you did. That was life change. And so when I retired from the NFL, I went through a stage of kind of like almost depression, and a lot of people, I don't really tell this story a lot, but so I went through this stage, man, where it was like not really been, and I think a lot of athletes struggle with this, is you go from literally we work off a schedule, and it's like, okay, here at 8 a.m., 11 a.m. here. Okay, everything is, so it's like when you lead a game of football and you got all of this free time. And, so I had started to struggle with just finding out what my purpose is and kind of what to do next. And I started a company that did some great things. And ultimately, it wasn't fulfilling of what I wanted to do, in life. And a few years ago, man, I decided that, I was going to leave an impact and I was going to start speaking and I was going to use my story and what I've been through to impact the world. And I was going to use my winning a championship because when I think about the reason why I say champion mentality is because to me, winning a championship, what do you equate that to? You equate it to leadership. You equate it to winning. You equate it to team success. And we're not just talking about sports. If you look at business and you look at, life in general, it's like if you take certain steps, the same steps I just walk you through to be successful in football, if I apply those same steps to life, I could become a champion of life. And to me, it's like these young kids that we talked about that struggling with, finding out, like I said, the number one thing they say, well, the coach, he don't like me, man. I'm better than the other guy. And it's like, man, listen, that's where the accountability part come in. And it's like,
yes.
And for me, it's like I get my first paid speech that I did, man, I never forget. I had the same nerves that I had when I was about to play a football game.
Yep.
But when I finished, I had that same fulfillment. And I felt like I left the same impact as if I had just won a Super Bowl. And that's when I told myself, like, this is it for me. This is what I'm going to do. And this is how I'm going to impact the world. And I want the world to hear my story. That's why I got plans to write a book. I want to write a book. That's one of my goals. And actually, I'm going to write 4 books.
Love it.
My goals. And ultimately, man, it's just to help the world understand, man, you can champion in whatever it is that you do.
Yes. It's so critical. And I know the impact you're having on athletes to adults in business and all that stuff is huge. And, even today, Sly, this is what I love about these interviews, right? I don't know where they're always going to go. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love most, right? It's like sports, and you get into a game and you kind of know how it's going to go, but you don't really, right? And the ultimate goal is to, win the game, stuff like that. For this, it's like, have a great interview, all that sort of stuff. Sure. But man, this is what I love about it. And your story and the impact it can have of young and old, I think is incredible and powerful. And even today, like what I've taken notes on and what I will, the story you've told, I mean, I'm blown away by it. I think, just your perspective on life and like what it takes and how you grew up and lessons you learned from your dad, right? And why you chose to, play football and put in the work while others don't. I mean, dude, like, I think this is for all you athletes, coaches, business leaders out there listening right now, man, these are the nuggets that if you just take and implement, it's massive. Right. And I know just based on your goals for writing books, Sly, everybody watching right now is going to be like, you better mark on your calendar. I don't know what the date is yet, but like the books are coming. So,
hey, listen, it's gonna be an amazing journey. And again, champion mentality is like having that mentality. And the reason why I know for a fact that it's all about the mentality, all about what you put in, is because I was in a position, like I said, I went through the stage of, depression, and it's like not really understanding what depression is or what it looked like. And it's like, what is this that I'm feeling? Why am I not motivated? Why am I? And I tell people this, man, I said, listen, I woke up one day and I was a multimillionaire and I owned a house in Florida, multi-million-dollar house in Florida. And guess what? Guess where I was at? I was sleeping on my sister's couch. And that was the day I woke up and I sat on the end of the couch and I said, man, that the way I looked at money, I stopped looking at it that way, because if money is all you have, then you have nothing. And really the true gems come in, finding that motivation within yourself and finding that drive to just get up every day. And I say all the time, just take the next step, whatever that step may be. Because if we look at, having a nice house or, that's all that could be taken away. But if you get up every day, you develop a mentality that, my goal is to just take the next step and just continue to move forward, then your success is never ending, because it's all about what's in you and not what's around you.
So good. It's so good. Oh, man. All right. So we're going to have a second one of these, and we're going to talk business and stuff like that one of these times. I think that'd be a blast. Like, how do we take this as like adults, business leaders, business owners, and apply these same lessons to build leaders within our team and us become the best leaders we can?
Oh yeah, man, I got a lot of gems, man, and I tell you, man, it's all in here. And again, my mission is to spread it to the world, you know,
Yes.
and I believe that I will be successful in doing so by applying those same principles that I applied to become a first-round draft pick and ultimately host that trophy.
Yes. It's bottom line, everyone watching, just replicate what Sly did, man. The mentality, the work.
I'm getting the blueprint. All you got to do is follow it. You know, just lean on. And when stuff get in your way, you know what you tell somebody to get in your way is you tell them you can't break me because you ain't make me. You know, and live by that mentality because adversity will strike. That's just a way of life.
Truly
and
is.
When adversity strike, man, you just, okay, keep going. I don't care if it become from a big step, just make it a small step, but just keep going forward. You'll be all right.
So good. All right. On that note, Sly, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I can't thank you enough. This has been an absolute blast.
I appreciate you having me, man. I really do. And like I said, we definitely got to connect when my schedules allow.
Heck yes. Heck yes. Well, for all you watching, listening right now, I want to thank you as well. It's, like I said, I look forward to these like you have no idea, being able to tell people stories and climb into their heads a little bit and pull out these just gems and nuggets, right? And these themes that are popping up. And I urge you to share this interview with your friends, your family, your teammates, your colleagues, whoever you need to. Please share this right away. And if you didn't take notes, go back and watch this again and get out your pen and paper and start taking some notes so you can take action upon it. So with that, thank you all again, and we'll see you on the next Masters of the Game interview. Have a great day, everyone.